Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. I should have been on a plane home by now. I should have been telling my friends about my trip, showing off souvenirs, laughing over a drink. Instead, I was hiding in a locked hotel room, holding my breath, listening to something in the hallway that wasn't human anymore. It started as a normal vacation. I'd always wanted to visit this city, historic streets, vibrant nightlife, amazing food. My flight was in the morning, so I spent my last night at a quiet bar near my hotel, sipping a drink, chatting with locals. If I had known what was coming, I would have stayed in my room, locked the door, and waited for daylight. The first sign that something was wrong came just after midnight. I was walking back to my hotel when I heard sirens. Too many, all at once. Police cars sped past, followed by ambulances. A few blocks ahead, people were shouting, running in different directions. I stopped at the corner trying to see what was happening. That's when a man stumbled out of an alley, covered in something dark. He collapsed on the sidewalk, gasping for air. A woman knelt beside him, shaking his shoulders, screaming for help. Then he moved. I don't mean he woke up. I mean he twitched, spasmed, and then lunged. He grabbed the woman with a speed that didn't make sense. She screamed, but it was cut off as they both crashed onto the pavement. I took a step back, heart pounding. More people were running now, some shoving past me. A man yelled something about staying inside, others weren't so lucky, confused, frozen in place, caught in the chaos. A second later, I heard the sound that would haunt me for the rest of my life. A guttural, inhuman growl. I turned and ran. My hotel was 3 blocks away. I sprinted through the streets, past cars stuck in traffic, past people yelling into their phones. Whatever was happening, it was spreading fast. I reached the entrance, nearly crashing into the glass doors. The lobby was mostly empty, except for the night clerk behind the front desk. He looked up as I burst inside, out of breath. "Sir, are you okay?" I tried to speak, but all that came out was, "Lock the doors." He frowned. "Excuse me?" I pointed outside. "Something's happening." "You need to lock." A woman slammed against the glass from the outside. Her face was pale, eyes unfocused. She pounded on the door with both hands, smearing something dark against the glass. The clerk hesitated. Then she started screaming. It wasn't words. It was pure, desperate terror. Before he could react, someone else crashed into her from behind. No, not someone. Something. A man, but wrong. His eyes were vacant, his mouth opened too wide, and he moved in a jerky, unnatural way. He grabbed her, and I turned away. I couldn't watch. The clerk gasped. He fumbled under the desk and hit a button. A loud click echoed as the automatic locks engaged. The woman outside kept pounding, but her movements grew weaker. Then, silence. A second later, something slammed into the doors. Hard. I didn't wait to see what happened next. I ran for the stairs. My room was on the 6th floor. I took the steps 2 at a time, lungs burning. I could still hear sirens outside, but inside the building it was eerily quiet. I reached my floor, sprinted down the hall, and fumbled with my keycard. My hands were shaking so badly that it took 3 tries before the lock flashed green. I shoved the door open, slammed it shut behind me, and locked every bolt. Then I waited. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if help was coming. All I knew was that something terrible had begun, and I was trapped in a city falling apart. And I had no idea how I was going to survive the next 12 hours. I sat on the floor, back against the door, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands were still shaking, my breath uneven. My mind refused to accept what I'd just seen. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. It wasn't a riot. It wasn't some random act of chaos. It was worse. Something spreading through the city like wildfire, something that turned people into those things. I needed to think. I needed a plan. First, I checked my phone. No service. The Wi-Fi was still working though, so I opened the news. Social media was flooded with shaky videos. People running, screaming, locking doors. A post from an account in the city said, "Something is wrong. People are attacking each other. Stay inside." Another said, "They don't stop. Even when the rest was cut off." Then there was a video. I shouldn't have clicked it. The shaky footage showed a street not far from my hotel. Cars were at a standstill, some with doors open, abandoned. People were running, some limping, others moving unnaturally fast. Someone in the background was yelling for help, but no one stopped. The camera turned, catching a glimpse of a man standing in the middle of the street. His skin was pale, eyes sunken. He was swaying slightly, as if unsure of his own body. Then he moved, sprinting straight at the person filming. The footage ended with a blur and a scream. I put the phone down, swallowing hard. Outside my window, sirens blared, mixed with distant shouts. The city lights flickered in the distance, some buildings already dark. A car alarm echoed through the night, then abruptly stopped. I needed to get out of here. I grabbed my backpack and shoved in whatever I could: bottled water from the minibar, granola bars, my passport. My suitcase was useless. I just needed what I could carry. Then I heard it. A noise from the hallway. A slow dragging sound like something heavy being pulled across the carpet. Then a knock. It was quiet at first. Just a soft tap, then another. Tap, tap, tap. I held my breath. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, methodical, too controlled to be random, too quiet to be human. Then came the worst part. A voice, low, slurred. "Help, me?" I clenched my jaw, gripping the straps of my backpack. "Please, open." No way. I inched toward the peephole, hesitant. The hallway was dimly lit, the emergency lights casting eerie shadows. And then I saw it. A man stood outside my door. He was facing away, swaying slightly. His clothes were torn, one sleeve soaked in something dark. His head twitched like he was struggling to keep control of his own body. Then, slowly, he turned. His eyes were wrong. Dark, cloudy, lifeless. His lips pulled back, revealing teeth stained with... I stumbled away from the door, heart hammering. The knocking stopped. Silence, then suddenly bang. The door shook as he slammed into it. I barely stopped myself from screaming. Bang, bang, bang. I grabbed a chair and jammed it under the handle. Not that it would help if the door gave in, but I had to do something. The pounding continued, harder, more desperate. Then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I stayed frozen, waiting, barely breathing. The dragging sound returned, fading down the hall. I didn't move for a long time. When I finally looked through the peephole again, the hallway was empty. For now, I wasn't safe here. I had to leave. I didn't sleep. I didn't even sit down. I just stood there, gripping the straps of my backpack, listening. The hallway was quiet now, but I knew better than to trust silence. Those things, whatever they were, moved unpredictably. They could be slow 1 second, then sprinting the next. The only thing I was sure of was that I had to get out of this hotel before it got worse. But where could I go? The streets were chaos. I'd seen the videos. Running blindly into the city would be a mistake, but staying here wasn't an option either. The hotel wasn't safe, and I had no idea how long the power or water would last. I needed a plan. I checked my phone again, still no signal. The Wi-Fi was working, but the news was useless. Everything was panicked updates, conflicting reports. The only thing people agreed on was this: stay inside, lock your doors, don't let them see you. Too late for that. I opened my Maps app, zooming in on the area. A few blocks south was a shopping plaza with a grocery store. If I moved fast, I could grab supplies. But what then? I spotted something else, a police station about a mile away. If anyone knew what was happening, it would be them. Maybe they had an evacuation plan. Maybe they were setting up a shelter. It wasn't much, but it was my best shot. First, I had to get out of this room. I moved carefully, keeping my footsteps light. I pressed my ear to the door. Nothing. I slowly slid the chair away and unlocked the deadbolt. The second the lock clicked, I froze, waiting. Still nothing. I eased the door open an inch, peering into the hallway. The emergency lights flickered, casting everything in an eerie glow. The hallway was empty. No movement, no sound. I stepped out, closing the door softly behind me. The stairwell was at the far end of the hall. I took slow, deliberate steps, avoiding the spots in the carpet that looked too soft. No unnecessary noise. I was almost there when I heard it. A door creaked open somewhere behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see. I moved faster. I reached the stairwell door and pulled it open just enough to slip inside. As it clicked shut behind me, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The stairs spiraled down into darkness. The emergency lights barely reached this far, leaving deep shadows along the walls. I started moving, keeping one hand on the railing. Every step felt too loud. Then I heard something below me. Shuffling. Slow, uneven footsteps echoing up the stairwell. I froze, gripping the railing tighter. The sound was getting closer. I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall. The steps were dragging, not quite in sync. Like whoever, or whatever, was down there wasn't walking properly. I looked up. The roof access was locked, and there were no other exits. If I went back into the hallway, I'd be trapped. I had no choice. I had to move past whatever was coming up the stairs. I took another step down, quiet as possible. Then another. The shuffling below me stopped. I swallowed hard. Then it moved fast. A shape lunged up the stairs. I only caught a glimpse, pale skin, vacant eyes, an open mouth. It made a sound, something between a gasp and a growl. I didn't think, I just ran. I took the steps two at a time, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles ached. The thing below let out a wheezing moan and started coming after me. It wasn't slow anymore. I reached the second floor and shoved through the door without hesitation. The hallway here was the same. Dim, flickering lights, abandoned luggage scattered on the floor. I ran. At the far end of the hall, I spotted a maintenance door propped open. A service elevator. I didn't trust the main lobby, but maybe a scream cut through the silence. Not from me, not from the thing in the stairwell. Someone else was down here. I skidded to a stop, heart pounding. The scream had come from a nearby room. A second later, I heard banging, desperate, terrified pounding against a door. Someone was trapped. I hesitated, pulse racing. If I stopped, I'd be risking my own life. If I didn't, I'd be leaving someone behind. The pounding grew weaker. I made my choice. I ran toward the sound. The pounding on the door was getting weaker. Whoever was inside didn't have much time. I reached the room and pressed my ear to the door. "Hey, are you okay?" I whispered. A muffled voice answered, frantic. "Please, help me. It's out there. It's..." A noise from behind me made my stomach drop. A low, shuddering breath. I turned slowly. At the far end of the hall, something stood in the dim light. It was a man, or had been. His clothes were torn, his face twisted in a way that shouldn't be possible. His mouth hung open, and his chest rose and fell with slow, ragged breaths. Then, his head snapped toward me. I didn't wait. I fumbled with the door handle. "It's locked. There's a key card in the slot. Take it, hurry." I looked up. Sure enough, a key card was tucked into the electronic reader. I yanked it out, swiped it again. Nothing. The thing down the hall twitched. I swiped again. The lock flashed red. The thing let out a slow, rasping moan. I swiped one last time. Green. The door clicked open, and I stumbled inside. A girl, maybe early 20s, stood in the middle of the room. She was barefoot, wearing sweatpants and a hoodie, her dark hair tangled. Her eyes were wide, terrified. I shut the door and locked it. We stood there, breathing hard. "What's going on?" she whispered. I shook my head. "I don't know, but we can't stay here." A thud against the door made us both jump. It was outside. The handle rattled. I grabbed the girl's arm. "Bathroom, now." We backed into the small hotel bathroom and shut the door. It wouldn't hold if that thing got in, but at least it was another barrier. We waited. The door rattled again. Then, after a long, agonizing moment, silence. I let out a shaky breath. "I think it's gone." The girl, her hands were still trembling, nodded. "I'm Olivia." "Jason." She swallowed hard. "Did you see what they look like? Their eyes? They're sick. Sick. It wasn't the right word, but I didn't have a better one." "We have to get out of this hotel," I said. "I was headed for the police station. It's about a mile away." Olivia hesitated. "Do you think they're still there? The police?" "I don't know," I admitted, "but it's the best shot we've got." She nodded, hugging her arms. "Okay." I checked my backpack, still had my water, granola bars, a pocket knife I'd packed just in case. Not much, but it was something. I peeked out the bathroom door. The room was still empty, no movement. I crept over to the hotel door and pressed my ear against it. Silence. I cracked it open an inch. The hallway was empty. "Let's go," I whispered. We moved quickly, keeping low, sticking close to the walls. The emergency lights flickered, casting eerie shadows across the hallway. Every sound, our footsteps, our breathing, felt too loud. We reached the service door. I pressed a hand against it, listening. Nothing. I pushed it open, revealing a maintenance stairwell. It smelled like dust and stale air. I turned to Olivia. "We take the stairs down to the ground floor, then straight out the back. No stopping." She nodded, gripping my sleeve. We started down. Step by step, slow and careful. Then, on the floor below us, a groan. Olivia squeezed my arm, her breath hitching. I held up a hand, signaling her to stay quiet. I leaned over the railing. Below, in the shadows, something moved. A shape slumped against the wall, a man barely visible in the dim light. His head lolled to the side, his chest rising and falling in slow, ragged breaths. Was he alive? As if sensing me, his head jerked upright. Clouded eyes locked onto mine. He twitched. Then, he sprinted up the stairs. I grabbed Olivia's wrist. "Run!" We bolted up the stairs, two at a time. The thing behind us moved impossibly fast, its breath a wheezing rattle. We reached the next landing. I yanked the door open and shoved Olivia inside. The stairwell door slammed shut behind us. We ran. The hallway ahead led to the emergency exit. Just a few more steps, a door ahead burst open. Another one of them staggered out. We were trapped. The thing in front of us twitched, head snapping toward the sound of our footsteps. Its eyes, clouded, empty, locked onto mine, then it moved. I grabbed Olivia's arm and yanked her backward just as it lunged. It slammed into the wall, its shoulder popping at an unnatural angle. But it didn't stop. It twisted toward us, mouth open, reaching. Behind us, the stairwell door rattled. The thing we had escaped from was trying to get in. We were out of time. There, Olivia pointed to a housekeeping cart abandoned in the hallway. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted for it, grabbed the handle and shoved it forward with everything I had. The cart barreled into the thing in front of us, knocking it back. It crumpled to the floor, tangled in linens and bottles of cleaning fluid. I didn't wait to see if it would get up. We ran. The emergency exit was just ahead. A heavy door with a push bar leading outside. I slammed into it shoulder first. It didn't budge. Eesh. Are you kidding me? Olivia cried. I pushed again. The door held firm. It had been chained from the outside. We were trapped. Behind us, the stairwell door slammed open. The thing from the stairs stumbled through, scanning for movement. And then, slowly, it turned toward us. I backed against the locked door, pulse hammering. Olivia grabbed my sleeve. It took a step, then another. The one, tangled in the housekeeping cart, twitched and started getting up. Panic surged through me. "Jason," Olivia whispered, "what do we do?" I looked around. There had to be another way. Then I saw it. To our left, a window. It was low to the ground, about 4 feet across. The glass was thick, but it wasn't reinforced. Beyond it, I could see the side alley, dark, empty. Our way out. I grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall. "Cover your face," I yelled. I swung with everything I had. The first hit cracked the glass. The second shattered it completely. Alarms blared. I didn't care. I knocked out the remaining shards with the extinguisher and turned to Olivia. "Go! Now!" She didn't hesitate. She climbed through, landing hard on the pavement outside. I turned back just as the first thing lunged. I barely dodged, stumbling backward. It slammed into the wall where I had been standing, but that didn't slow it down. It turned, reaching for me again. I dove for the window. Cold air hit my face as I tumbled through, landing hard on my shoulder. Pain shot through my arm, but I ignored it. I scrambled to my feet. Olivia grabbed my hand and yanked me up. Inside the hotel, the thing screeched. Then they started climbing through the broken window. "Run!" We took off down the alley. The city was different now. When I had arrived, it had been full of lights, laughter, life. Now it was silent. Streetlights flickered. Cars sat abandoned in the middle of the road, doors open. Trash and broken glass littered the sidewalks. In the distance, fires burned, smoke rising into the night sky. Somewhere far away, a siren wailed. But the worst part? The shadows moved. Figures limped between the abandoned cars. Others stood completely still, like they were waiting, watching. Olivia grabbed my arm. "Where now?" I pulled out my phone. No service. The map was still loaded, but that wouldn't help much if the roads were blocked. I pointed down the street. "Police station. We move fast, stay quiet, no unnecessary noise." She nodded, gripping the sleeves of her hoodie. "Okay." We stepped onto the main road, and the city swallowed us whole. We moved quickly, keeping low, sticking close to the sides of buildings. The city felt different now, hollow, like something had sucked the life out of it and left only echoes. The street ahead was a mess of abandoned cars. Some had their doors flung open, others sat in eerie stillness, their headlights still on. A bus had crashed into a streetlight. Its windshield shattered. No movement inside. "For now," I glanced at Olivia. "Stay close." She nodded. We slipped between the vehicles, careful not to make noise. Somewhere far off, a dog barked, short, panicked. Then a scream, cut off too fast. Olivia flinched. "Don't stop," I whispered. We kept moving. Halfway down the block, we spotted a body, a man, slumped against a taxi, his clothes soaked with something dark. His eyes were open, empty. I held my breath as we passed. Then his fingers twitched. I yanked Olivia forward, and we hurried past before he could move again. The further we went, the worse it got. More bodies. Some still, others shifting slightly, as if half awake. Shapes moved in alleyways, hunched and slow. A woman in a nightgown stood in the middle of the road, rocking back and forth like she was humming to herself. She didn't see us. We didn't give her a chance. We weaved through the chaos, avoiding anything that moved. The police station wasn't far now, just a few more blocks. If there were survivors anywhere, they'd be there. We turned a corner and froze. The street ahead was filled with them. Dozens, maybe more. Some stood still. Others wandered in slow, uneven circles. One leaned against a car, pressing its head to the window like it was listening for something inside. My stomach dropped. "We can't go this way," Olivia whispered. She was right. The street was a trap. If we stepped out, they'd see us. I scanned the buildings. A coffee shop to our left, glass doors shattered. A convenience store on the right, shelves knocked over inside, and further down, a narrow alley leading away from the main road. "There," I pointed to the alley. We backed away slowly, careful not to draw attention. Then, from somewhere behind us, a car alarm blared to life. The noise cut through the silence like a knife. Every single one of them turned towards the sound. Then they moved. They didn't shuffle, they ran. A flood of bodies rushed toward the noise, clawing at the source of the sound, climbing over cars, smashing windows. The alarm kept blaring, but it wouldn't last. I grabbed Olivia's hand. "Go, now!" We bolted for the alley. Darkness swallowed us as we sprinted between the buildings, dodging dumpsters and broken crates. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. We turned another corner in a dead end, a chain-link fence too high to climb in time. I spun around. At the alley entrance, a shadow moved. One of them had followed us. It stepped forward, slow at first, its empty eyes locking onto mine. Then its mouth twitched. It screamed. Not a normal scream. A dry, rasping wail that sent ice down my spine. More footsteps. They were coming. Olivia grabbed my arm. "What do we do?" I searched wildly. Trash cans, wooden pallets, nothing useful. Then I saw it. A door, rusted metal, set into the brick wall to our left. I ran to it and yanked the handle, locked. "Help me!" Olivia joined me, slamming her shoulder against the door. It didn't budge. The footsteps were getting closer. I kicked the door as hard as I could. Nothing. The first shadow entered the alley. Then another. I kicked again. Something snapped. The frame splintered and the door swung open into pitch darkness. Inside. We stumbled through just as the first of them reached the entrance. I slammed the door shut and threw my weight against it. A second later, bang. Something slammed into the other side. Then another, and another. The door shuddered as they clawed and scratched, trying to force their way in. I backed away, breathing hard. Olivia clutched her chest, gasping for air. It was pitch black inside, no windows, no way to see where we were. I fumbled for my phone, turning on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, revealing rusted shelves, scattered tools, and old wooden crates. We weren't in a building. We were in a basement. A locked basement. Trapped. The pounding on the door grew louder. The door shuddered with every impact. Fists, shoulders, clawed hands raking against the metal. We had seconds before it gave in. I spun around, my phone's flashlight cutting through the dark. Rusted shelves lined the walls covered in dust. Tools, buckets, and old junk lay scattered across the floor. No windows, no other doors. "We're trapped," Olivia whispered. I wasn't ready to accept that. I ran to the nearest shelf, shoving things aside. Old cans, tangled wires, nothing useful. Olivia did the same, her hands shaking as she searched through a pile of wooden crates. Bang! The door dented inward. I grabbed a crowbar off the floor. Not much, but better than nothing. Olivia gasped. "Over here!" I rushed to her side. She was kneeling beside an old hatch set into the floor. Rusted, but solid. She yanked at the handle. It didn't budge. "I think it leads to the sewers," she said. Better than waiting to get torn apart. I wedged the crowbar into the gap and pulled. The metal groaned, resisting. Behind us, crash! The door caved inward. The first thing stumbled through, its body twisting unnaturally as it forced itself inside. Its hollow eyes gleamed in the light of my phone. Then it screamed. More shadows poured through the broken doorway. I gave the crowbar one last yank. The hatch popped open. The stench hit immediately. Damp, foul, thick enough to choke on. But I didn't care. I grabbed Olivia's arm and pulled her toward the opening. "Go!" She didn't hesitate. She swung her legs over the edge and dropped. I heard a splash below. I turned just in time to see one of them lunge. I barely dodged, swinging the crowbar as hard as I could. It connected with a sickening crack, and the thing staggered back. I didn't wait for it to recover. I jumped. The world went dark as I plunged into ice-cold water. For a second, I couldn't breathe. I kicked upward, raking the surface, gasping for air. The water was waist-deep, thick with filth. The smell was unbearable. Olivia grabbed my arm. "Come on!" Above us, shadows crowded the hatch. Hands reached down, clawing at the air. Then one of them jumped. It hit the water with a splash, flailing wildly. The thing couldn't swim. It thrashed, sinking beneath the surface. But it wasn't alone. More dropped in, one after another. We ran. The tunnel stretched ahead, dark and endless. The only light came from my phone, casting eerie shadows against the slimy walls. Water splashed behind us. They were still coming. We reached a fork in the tunnel, left or right. No time to think. We took the left. The passage narrowed, the ceiling lower. I could barely hear over my own breathing, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then I saw it. A rusted ladder bolted into the wall, leading up to another hatch. Our way out. "Go! Go!" I boosted Olivia up. She scrambled onto the first rung and climbed. I followed, water streaming off me. Below, the tunnel filled with movement, shadows closing in, splashes growing louder. Olivia reached the hatch. She pushed. It didn't move. "No, no, no," she whimpered, shoving harder. "It's stuck." I climbed up beside her and braced my back against the tunnel wall, pushing with my legs. The hatch burst open. Cool air rushed in. Olivia climbed out first. I scrambled after her, pulling myself onto solid ground. Then I turned and slammed the hatch shut. A muffled thump sounded from below. Then another. They had reached the ladder. I spotted a rusted pipe nearby. I wedged it through the hatch handle, jamming it shut. We collapsed onto the pavement, gasping. We had made it. But as I looked around, my stomach sank. We weren't safe. The city was worse than before. Fires burned in the distance. Sirens wailed. And the streets were filled with them, hundreds. We lay on the pavement, gasping for air. The stench of sewage still clung to my skin, but I barely noticed. My mind was on the streets ahead, the sheer number of them. Hundreds. They shambled between abandoned cars, some standing still like they were listening. Others moved with unsettling purpose, their heads twitching as if searching for something unseen. The city was gone. Sirens howled in the distance. Helicopters rumbled overhead, their spotlights sweeping through the smoke-filled skyline. Fires burned in the windows of shattered buildings. But the worst part? There were no other people. No police barricades, no evacuation squads. Just them. "We need to move," Olivia whispered. I forced myself up, shaking. "Where?" She looked around wildly. "The police station." I cut her off with a sharp shake of my head. "Look." Down the street, just past the wreckage of a bus, the police station stood. Its doors had been torn from their hinges. The windows smashed, the bodies outside weren't moving. But they weren't whole, either. The police were gone. If there had been survivors there, they weren't anymore. "We need a new plan," I muttered. Olivia swallowed hard. "Then where do we go?" I looked up. The rooftops. Most of the buildings here were old brick structures with metal fire escapes. If we could get to higher ground, we'd have a better chance of spotting somewhere safe. I pointed to the nearest one, a 3-story building with a narrow alley beside it. A fire escape ladder dangled about 10 feet up, too high to reach from the ground. But not impossible. "This way." We stuck to the shadows, moving between cars, ducking low whenever one of them got too close. I could hear them breathing, dry, ragged gasps. The way they twitched, the way their heads snapped toward a sudden movement, made my skin crawl. But they weren't fast, not unless they saw you. We reached the alley. The fire escape was just above us, swaying slightly in the wind. Olivia grabbed my arm. "How do we—" A scream cut through the night. Not from us. Somewhere, down the street, a man sprinted out of a shattered storefront, clutching his leg. He stumbled, falling to his knees. They saw him. In an instant, they turned, every single one. Then they ran. The man barely had time to crawl before they were on him. I grabbed Olivia's wrist. "Now, climb." She hesitated for half a second before planting her foot against the wall. I laced my fingers together, crouching. She stepped into my hands and I threw her up. She grabbed the ladder, pulling herself up. I jumped, grabbing the bottom rung. My muscles screamed, but I forced myself up just as Olivia reached the first platform. Below us, the street erupted into chaos. The man's screams stopped. But now they were agitated. They moved faster, slamming into cars, searching, looking. For us? I climbed as fast as I could, reaching Olivia just as she pulled herself onto the roof. I swung my leg over the edge and collapsed onto the concrete, my chest heaving. Silence. For the first time in hours, we weren't surrounded. I sat up slowly. From up here, we could see everything. The city stretched before us, once vibrant, now in ruins. Fires burned, streets were clogged with wreckage. Helicopters circled in the distance, their searchlights scanning the streets. Then I spotted something else. A building a few blocks over. Its rooftop was lined with people. Survivors. I grabbed Olivia's shoulder. "Look!" Her eyes widened. "We're not alone." I exhaled, a flicker of hope sparking in my chest. We just have to get there. But the streets were crawling with them, and the night was far from over. Hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt it. A rooftop a few blocks away. People standing there, moving, watching. Survivors. We weren't alone, but getting to them wouldn't be easy. The streets below were packed. They filled every alley, every intersection. Some stood motionless, heads twitching at distant sounds. Others wandered, aimless but restless, as if sensing something just out of reach. If we climbed down, we'd never make it. The rooftops were our only way across. Olivia followed my gaze and nodded. We go building to building. I scanned the gap between this rooftop and the next, about 6 feet. Doable. But beyond that, the jumps would get harder. Some buildings had lower roofs, meaning we'd have to drop. Others had gaps too wide to cross. We had to be careful. Let's go. I stepped back, took a deep breath, and sprinted forward. My foot hit the edge and I jumped. For a second, I was weightless, suspended in the air between safety and a 3-story drop. Then my feet slammed onto solid concrete. I stumbled but caught myself. Olivia didn't hesitate. She took a running start and leapt, landing beside me with a soft grunt. We moved fast, hopping over vents, ducking under rusted pipes, scaling short ledges. Every step had to be precise. One wrong move and we'd be trapped. 2 more rooftops. 3. Then we hit a problem. The next building was too far, at least 12 feet across and slightly lower. A bad jump would send us straight into the alley below. I scanned for another way. Nothing. We'd have to climb down. Olivia pointed to an old drain pipe running along the side of the building, rusted but intact. I tested it, wobbly, but it would hold. I went first, gripping tight as I lowered myself down. My feet scraped against the brick wall, searching for a foothold. Halfway down, the pipe creaked. Then it snapped. I fell, slamming onto a metal balcony below. Pain shot through my ribs, knocking the wind out of me. "Above!" Olivia gasped. "Are you okay?" I groaned, rolling onto my side. "Yeah, just don't do it that way." She took a safer route, carefully climbing down a ledge before dropping next to me. The street was closer now. I could hear them breathing, the shuffling of feet, the occasional click of a twitching jaw. Too close. We had to keep moving. We hurried across the balcony and climbed through a broken window into what looked like an old apartment. Dark, empty, furniture overturned, like someone had left in a hurry. A half-eaten meal sat on a table, long since rotted. The air smelled stale. We moved quickly, stepping over shattered glass and scattered clothes. Then Olivia froze. A door at the end of the hallway was open, and something was inside. A shape in the darkness, barely visible, hunched, motionless, but breathing. I slowly reached for my crowbar, gripping it tight. Then the thing moved. Not towards us, just a slight twitch, like it was waking up. We backed away, silent. The fire escape was just past the kitchen window. If we could reach it without making a sound, the floor creaked. The thing's head snapped toward us. Its eyes gleamed in the dim light, locked onto mine. For a second, nothing happened. Then its mouth twitched. It screamed. The noise shattered the silence. From the streets below, dozens of heads turned. Then they moved. Footsteps pounded. Hands clawed at walls. They were coming. I grabbed Olivia's wrist. "Go!" We bolted for the window, climbing through just as the thing in the hallway lunged. I heard it slam into the doorframe behind us, snarling. We didn't stop. We raced down the fire escape, hitting the next rooftop just as the street erupted into chaos. They were climbing now, scrambling over cars, clawing at drain pipes, scaling the buildings. The safe rooftop was only 1 block away. One last jump, one last chance. I grabbed Olivia's hand, pulled her forward, and we ran. We ran. The rooftop trembled beneath our feet as we sprinted toward the final gap. The street below had become a writhing mass of bodies, hundreds of them, surging toward the buildings, scrambling up drain pipes and fire escapes. They were faster now, more desperate. I risked a glance back. They were on the rooftops behind us, closing in. The next building was just ahead. Only one leap separated us from the survivors. But the gap was huge, 15 feet, maybe more. Too far. "We're not going to make it," Olivia gasped. We had no choice. I didn't slow down. I reached for her hand and squeezed. "Jump." She hesitated for half a second. Then we launched ourselves into the air. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. No sound, no weight, just open air beneath us. Then Olivia hit the edge. Her fingers scrambled for a grip, nails digging into the concrete. I wasn't as lucky. I slammed into the ledge hard, my chest smacking against the rough stone. My arms flailed, barely catching hold. Below me, the street swarmed with them. They screamed. Olivia grabbed my wrist. "Hold on!" I tried to pull myself up, but my muscles were failing. My arms burned, my ribs ached from the earlier fall. Then a new pair of hands reached down. A man, his face smudged with dirt, eyes sharp with determination. "I got you." I had no choice but to trust him. With a final burst of strength, I kicked against the wall, and they hauled me up. I collapsed onto the rooftop, gasping. Olivia was beside me, hands on my shoulders, eyes wide with relief. We had made it. But the others were still coming. They leapt from the rooftops behind us, flailing mid-air, only to fall short, plummeting into the chaos below. More tried to climb, grabbing at loose bricks, scrambling for footholds. The survivors acted fast. A man swung a metal bat, knocking a reaching hand away. Another shoved a crate over the edge, sending a climber crashing down. Someone fired a flare gun, the bright red glow streaking into the sky. The creatures didn't stop. They never did. But for now, the rooftop was safe. I sat up, still catching my breath. A woman knelt beside me. Her face was streaked with sweat, her dark hair tied back. "You okay?" I nodded weakly. "Yeah, thanks." She offered a tired smile. "You two picked the worst night for a vacation." I almost laughed, almost. The survivors gathered around. A dozen of them. Different ages, different backgrounds. Just people. People like us, who had been lucky enough to make it this far. "We're waiting for a chopper," the woman explained. "Military's evacuating pockets of survivors. We just have to hold out." I looked past her toward the skyline. In the distance, I saw it. A helicopter. Flying low, weaving between smoke and fire. Hope. Real hope. For the first time in hours, I let myself believe. We had survived the first 12 hours. And if we could survive that, we could survive anything. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.